Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that you've seen me review a couple of things from now, and this is one of their recent collaboration releases that came through the small partiers through Systembolaget here. Can't remember exactly what date it was released, but this one is supposed to be a pretty nice beer actually, and I'm very curious to see how it turns out. The brewery that they've collaborated with as well is one that I have not tried anything from before, but I have heard very good things about them. So for this review then, we are going to head up towards Stockholm once again. We're having a look at another beer from Stockholm Brewing Company, and this is a collaboration that they've done with Gigantic Brewing Company, who come from Portland over in Oregon on the west coast of America. This particular beer is called the Gigantic Transatlantic IPA, and it comes in at 6.4% ABV. Like I mentioned earlier, this one was released through one of the small partiers through Systembolaget here in Sweden, but I honestly cannot remember exactly what date this one was released, but it was one of the last 2 or 3 anyway. But looking forward to trying this one, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. I've had some good experiences with Stockholm Brewing Company before, and I've heard some really quite good things about Gigantic Brewing as well. So looking forward to this, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Stockholm Brewing Company before. No doubt I'll add more to that list in the fairly near future, and a link to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Gigantic Brewing. Very first time I'm encountering them, as I said, but hopefully I can get hold of some of their own beers when I go over to Japan. There is a lot of the Oregon beers available in Japan because it's a bit closer and we don't get so many of them over here in Europe. But there's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you, and another list for all the American ones as well. Both of those are being added to very regularly, of course, whenever I can, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about the breweries then, on to my brewery notes, and we'll start with Stockholm Brewing since these guys are the home brewery, if you like. So Stockholm Brewing, as the name suggests, are based in Stockholm, and they were founded back in 2012 by Niklas Jakobsson, Thomas Hallgren and Niklas Lenkel, but they were joined in 2016 by Mimi Pettersson, who joined the company to increase their sales and has a background in the restaurant industry, and then later they were joined in 2018 by Emil Törström, who runs the restaurant side of the company. But they were also apparently the first craft brewery in Sweden to open up a tasting room at the brewery, so they were quite instrumental in getting the laws changed to allow others to follow suit. But by 2016, these guys were brewing around 150,000 litres of beer, and the brewery were originally based in Söder in Stockholm, but they've more recently moved in 2018 to a new place in an old brick house at Frihamnen, the Free Harbour, which is out to the east of the city, and they also have a restaurant there as well, which is supposed to be really quite nice. Hopefully the next time I go to Stockholm I can go and check it out. But they also have their own small farm outside of Stockholm, which is called the Karshamra Trädgård, and a chunk of the things that they use in the restaurant for their food and stuff actually come from there, and this is run by Agnes and Maurits, and they are also involved in the actual restaurant side of the business as well. The current head brewer is Michael Alin Vigart, and he's joined by assistants Albin and Max, and they're also affiliated with the company Wine Trade as well, which is run by Ollie Bartlett, who is also involved in the brewery side of the business as well. So this is a company that has a good number of partners in it who all have their own expertise, and they have been becoming really quite well regarded actually. This must be about the 4th or 5th beer that I've tried from these guys, and I have to admit, I have been impressed with the quality of things that they've done so far. They seem to mainly specialise in like sour beers and IPAs, sort of top fermented style beers. And there are a good number of breweries who do that in Sweden, so it would be cool to see these guys have a go at an Imperial Stout or something like this actually. And Ollie actually has been in contact with me since I did my first videos on this brewery, but they seem to be fairly prolific. They're always putting out new beers through the local and small assortments, as well as the a few in the small partiers. Now the market, of course, in Sweden has changed. It's not only small partiers that the Swedish brewers can release in. They can release in the local assortments at the start of every month, so that's very good. And you know, they have been fairly prolific as well, actually. So definitely a brewery that you want to check out if you find yourself up in Stockholm. There are a good other couple up there as well, but you know, Stockholm Brewing Company are maybe one of the more accessible ones, actually. I would say these guys, along with Omnipoyo, are probably the best known brewers in the Stockholm area. Quite a few other breweries are dotted around the kind of Stockholm peninsula, or the Stockholm area, if it's right to call it that, actually. So yeah, make sure you check these guys out. You will get some good quality beers from them. But that's all you really need to know about Stockholm Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website, which you'll find in the description below, and you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And if you are interested in all the different beers that these guys have done, I would recommend you take a little look at the Rate Beer and Untappd pages as well. So yeah, let's get on to the American side of things then. Let's go to Gigantic Brewing Company. So Gigantic Brewing Company, as I mentioned to you earlier, are based in Portland in Oregon, and they were founded back in 2012 by Van Heving and Ben Love, and the brewery is named for the fact that they didn't want the brewery to evolve into a massive brewery, but rather have a big presence. So they say that basically the name is based on irony, essentially. But Ben had been a long time beer enthusiast, first drinking his beers legally in 1999, but he'd worked previously at Alderbrow Brew Pub in Wisconsin before returning home to Oregon to brew at Pelican in Pacific City, and then at Hopworks Urban Brewery Hub, before deciding that he wanted his own business. Van, on the other hand, had a background in economics and was actually a PhD student in economics, from what I understand. But then he decided to become a brewer, and he worked for Minnesota Brewing Company in St. Paul in Minnesota for a good number of years before working for Rock Bottom Breweries in various different locations. This was in Minneapolis in Minnesota, Bethesda in Maryland, and then Portland in Oregon. But the two, you know, decided to work together because they got on very well. They met professionally, essentially, and Van wasn't really happy at Rock Bottom anymore because of the direction that the company was taking, and Ben wanted to start his own business, so they thought it was kind of logical that they got together. So they got together, wrote their business plan, all of this kind of thing, and then they opened their doors of their own brewery in May of 2012, and they were equipped with a 15-barrel brew kit, and they were brewing somewhere in the region of 4,000 US barrels of beer per year in the beginning, but I believe that has been scaled up a little bit since then. But this brewery can be found in the southeastern part of the city. It's got an on-site tap room as well, which has a good number of different things there, and as of October 2019, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced just over 250 different types of beers. I think the exact number was 268 when I had a little look on Untappd as well. So quite a prolific brewery for someone that's only been around, or for a brewery that's only been around about 7 years, to have, you know, 270 beers. You know, that's pretty impressive, you have to say. That's a good, you know, what would it be? It would be a good, like, 3 or 4 different beers a month, actually. So pretty impressive, as well as them brewing their core range and things like that. So a very experimental brewery, this one. Oregon, as we know, is a pretty damn well-respected beer state, I guess you could say. The California and Colorado were the ones that we always used to hear about over here back in the day. Now it's all about, it's pretty much all over the place. You get good breweries all over the place in America now. But yeah, cool to encounter this brewery for the first time, after having heard some good things about them, and hopefully I can get out to Oregon actually at some point and take a little look at it. I've been to about 23 different states so far, but Oregon is one that I've never managed to explore yet. But it would be a very good beer holiday to go over there and take a little look around, and of course go and see some of the scenery when you've got a little buzz on. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Gigantic Brewing Company for the moment. Again, if you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that as well, and that'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on. And if you're interested in the different beers, you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages as well. These guys also have their own comic, actually, which you can go and look at on the website too, and it's quite interesting. The artwork, I guess, that's on this can is based a little bit on the style of artwork that you'll see in the comic books there, so go and check those out. They're quite interesting. I think both of the guys were actually quite interested in comics and things like that too. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. You can check out all those links in the description below, as I've just said. So yeah, as I mentioned, this beer was released, I believe, at the very end of September 2018. I want to say it might have been the 18th or so of September that this beer was released through the Small Partiers. But it is a 6.4% IPA, the Gigantic Transatlantic IPA, an aromatic and fruity IPA with Mandarin and Bavaria, Cascade, Citra and Mosaic. So some interesting hops there. Mandarin and Bavaria, of course, a nice 7 or 8% alpha acid hop from Germany. Lovely orange flavours. Cascade is that classic Yakima Valley hop that we all know. Citra is one of the big, know, one of the big early complex hops that came out. Mangoes, you know, lots of different little subtleties you can get from it as well, lychees, gooseberries, all that kind of thing. And Mosaic is that big lovely kind of tangerine hop that it can sometimes give you a little bit of like pineapple, and I found it gives you a bit of blueberry as well. But it says here that this is a collaboration brew made together with Gigantic Brewing from Portland over in Oregon. So yeah, there you can see, there is the European Union organic symbol there, so all the grains and malts in this one will be organic, but brewed with heritage grain malt from Varbo Kvarn, hops and water in Stockholm, Sweden, and it is a Starköl, which obviously means that it is over 3.5%, which is the legal limit for you selling beers through the supermarket here in Sweden. Just a little tip for those of you watching over in America. But yeah, let's get this guy out then, and we will get on with the tasting. A little 330 milliliter can, this one, which is different from your American measurements, because I know that America has a very strange system about cups, pints, quarts, and all these kind of things. Gallons too. 4.5 litres or something like that is 1 US gallon. But yeah, nice artwork on this one, I have to say. Very comic-y, as I was mentioning earlier. But yeah, let's take a look at this beer and see how we go on. I will say that when you pour this beer, the aroma of it is really quite nice. So this one, it looks quite hazy, but in terms of appearance, to be honest with you, you will find some West Coast IPAs that are very similar in appearance to this. You know, they're not all, you know, dark and clear and things like that. Quite a few of the West Coast IPAs can be a little bit brighter and yellow like this. I'm really not sure exactly whether this one will be a New England or more of a West Coasty one, or even one of the hybrids, but it says on here, yeah, there's wheat malt inside it, but it doesn't have oats. So it says innehåller corn malt, vetemalt. So yeah, it's got a little bit of wheat and barley malt in it. So it might be a little bit more like a white IPA or something like that, rather than a proper New England kind of thing. You don't see many white IPAs anymore, to be honest with you. But yeah, in terms of colour, this one is a lovely, quite bright yellow. You could see there was a good 2/3 finger of a frothy, but a little bit bumpy white head on this one. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and you can see there is just a few dots of sediment there that have sunk down to the bottom. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see there is a degree of haze or opacity or whatever that you want to whichever synonym you wish to use, but you can see, you know, this one is a pretty nice looking IPA. Not the haziest that you're going to find, and not the clearest that you're going to find either. Somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. So yeah, let's take a closer look at that aroma then, and just see how we get on with this one. I'm really curious as to where this one is going to turn out actually. But yeah, straight away with this beer, oranges. And that'll be both the Mosaic and the Mandarina kind of things. With both of those giving you those orangey notes. To be honest with you, this one comes across as being a little bit rustic and farmhousey. It reminds me, the aroma that you get out of this one actually does remind me of what you might get from the likes of Heady Topper or something like that. It's that rusticy, classic New England farmhouse type thing. A lot of the New England IPAs that we find over here in Europe, for example from Stigbergets and Dugas Brewery, Amundsen, Amar Brewkes and things like that, they're a lot more creamy and kind of sweet, if you like, than the original New England ones actually were. Cloudwater and Wylam and all of and Daya and all of these kind of breweries in England, of course, do the same sort of thing. But the original New England beers were always a little bit more farmhousey. It's got this, you know, usually these kind of mix of vegetal, herbal, kind of grainy sort of thing, and you can pick up a little bit of that forming the baseline of this beer. It definitely has a little bit more of that kind of quality to it. I mean, the other thing it reminds me of is the Kvike yeasts a little bit. Those sort of nice farmhousey yeasts that have been coming down from Norway recently. So yeah, the aroma of that is quite interesting. There's perhaps a little bit of a biscuity note in there, but mainly you can pick up the nice white bready wheaty note, and it smells as if those sort of vegetal, herbal, grainy sort of things are mixed into that, and that, as I say, is the yeasty qualities coming out of the beer. Other than that, it has a little bit of a biscuity note. You might pick out a little touch of a kind of woody aroma to it, in fairness. Yeah, you can definitely pick out a little bit of a slightly woody aroma to this beer. I would definitely say that, but otherwise, the hops that come out of this one are very, very nice. This one, to be honest, does smell like a kind of classic New England hazy IPA, to be honest with you, but it doesn't have the oats in it, and I don't know if the original ones actually did. I can't remember. But on the hoppy side of things, it's really nice as well. The malt base is fairly kind of straightforward. It's the yeasty notes that are giving it the complexity. But on the hoppy side of things, you've got a nice little bit of a floral aromaticity there. I'd say the green side of the hops leans a little bit more towards the grassy end of the spectrum. You've also got a little bit of earthiness there, which will come from the mosaic. Mosaic will always give you just a little touch of earthiness. But the fruitiness is very, very nice on this. As I was saying earlier, a nice bit of a kind of orangey quality to this beer. So you've got some of the more oily oranges, which will be from the Mandarin Bavaria. You've also got a little bit of that lighter, slightly more juicy kind of tangerine note to the beer as well. And I do like that actually. I've always been a big fan of IPAs where oranges have been prominent. Amarillo was always one of my favourite hops actually. Back in the day, but you don't see it being used too much anymore. There's Azaka, there's Pacifica. I think Sabro actually, if I remember rightly, gives you a big orangey note, or it's another one that's one of the other new ones that's kind of come out. But yeah, definitely a little touch of mango kind of underneath, maybe even a little bit of pineapple or something like that. But you can smell that some of the floral notes coming out of this one are quite distinctive. Because there's a little bit of that German noble kind of thing going on in there from the Mandarin of Bavaria, and you always find that with German hops, regardless of how high alpha acid it is. Even with the Hallertau Blanc, for example, it always has that quite distinctive, bright floral quality to it. But you can smell some of the cascadey notes coming out of this as well. That's got an even, it's almost a little bit more it's still quite bright, but it's a little bit more spicy, I think, than Mandarin of Bavaria. So there's a good floral character to this one, some nice light grassy notes there as well. But there's a little bit of tropical fruit, like I say, but mainly this is a big orangey IPA rather than anything else. Perhaps a little bit of like a lychee, gooseberry kind of complexity to it as well from the citra. But it's a nice smelling beer, that very sort of classic New England farmhousey type IPA in terms of its aroma. So take a bit of time and just enjoy it for yourself before you get stuck in. But we're going to have a taste of this one now and see how we get on. This one is the gigantic Transatlantic IPA from Stockholm Brewing Company up in Stockholm, in collaboration with the gigantic Brewing Company from Portland. I was going to say Eugene there, from Portland over in Oregon in the US. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål. Yeah, it's quite nice actually. First impression would be, this beer comes across as being very sessionable and very easy to drink. And of course, obviously, some people might say, right, you know, a session IPA is what, around 4%, 5% at most. But really, it comes across very, very much like that. I mean, it's 6.4%. It's a kind of standard percentage for a New England IPA. Or actually, it says on the can here, it's difficult to make out, 6.5%. So my apologies, I've told you a bit of a lie. 6.5%, not 6.4. But yeah. But what you'll notice with this beer as well is that in the beginning, it does have a little bit of a kind of fruity bite to it. It comes across as being almost a little bit citric in the beginning, which is nice. And it's not tart in any kind of sense like a sour beer, but it just has a little bit of a bite to the fruity qualities, which is really pretty nice, I have to admit. So yeah, I like how this one goes together. So let's start off and break down the flavour of this beer then. Straight away, you're going to feel that nice kind of wheaty, bready base. That just blankets the middle of your palate there. But you can feel it dry out a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste, and it gets just that little bit more grainy. In the middle of the palate, you can get a few of those kind of yeasty, farmhousey yeasty notes that I was talking about. That sort of vegetal, kind of herbally type note that you'll get from these more farmhousey yeast. You can feel that just infused into that sort of wheaty, bready base that the beer has. If you move more towards the centre of the palate, you've got a little touch of a kind of biscuity note in there as well. So there is a little bit of sweetness in the middle of the palate there. But yeah, I do like how that malt base goes together. You'll find in the beginning, you've seen how long it was since I took a sip now, so a couple of seconds after you take this beer, and you will start to get that herbally, vegetally kind of thing from the farmhousey notes. And it's kind of interesting. Like I say, that's the thing about this beer that's properly old school New England, kind of alchemist sort of thing, farmhousey type beer. But I do like how that kind of comes together. It is quite nice. The further you go into the aftertaste though, you'll find the middle of your palate dries out a little bit and it leans a bit more towards the grainy side of things. But in fairness, you do get some of the you do get a little bit of the kind of herbally, you do get a little bit more of the kind of wheaty smoothness kind of pushing its way out of this one too, which is nice. On the hoppy end of the beer, yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate, you get a little bit of that darker earthiness there, and that's coming from the Mosaic. Mosaic does give you just a little bit of a strong earthiness in the back of the palate and the back corners of the palate. But then as you come further forward, it evolves a little bit more. You get a little bit of a bigger floral aromaticity to this beer, which will likely again be from the Mosaic and the Citra, but you can feel underneath that there is a little bit of the more nobly note from the Mandarin of Bavaria, and then round the front curve of the palate you've got a little bit of that grassiness as well. And the grassiness is a little bit more, is it right to say bright and floral, the grassy notes in this beer? And I think that's the Cascade coming out. Cascade, I think, it is, as I say, the floral and grassy notes in that hop are quite distinctive. And the reason I know that is because one of my kind of go-to beers back home in Scotland, the Schiehallion Lager from Harveston Brewery, it's a Cascade Pilsner basically, and I really know that hop quite well because of that. I really like that beer. Been missing it over here in Sweden actually, but you know, it's the grassy and floral notes you get at the front of the tongue. There's a bit of that German noble note in there from Mandarin of Bavaria, but the grassiness for me is quite distinctively Cascadian, if you like. So yeah. But on the fruity side of this beer, in the back corners, sorry, not in the back corners, just behind the front curve of your tongue, you get that little oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters push their way out of the beer. And this one is quite interesting. If you go towards the back of that oily bubble, you'll get a little bit of a grapefruity note, and that will be coming both from the Citra and from the Cascade. Like, depending on what you mix Citra with, it will give you a little bit of that darker grapefruity kind of passion fruity flavour, and Cascade is very sort of straight up and grapefruity, to be honest with you, so you can pick that out in this beer. So it definitely has a little bit of that in there. As you move further forward from that, it does become a little bit more mango-y, and coming further forward it starts to lean towards those juicy tangerine oranges, and some of the complexities that you get just on almost the front tip of your tongue are pretty nice, I have to say. So for me, you've got a little bit of an almost limey character to this one, which would be from the Citra. There is almost just a little touch of a limey note in there, perhaps some kind of gooseberry, lychee type notes as well, and almost in the very tip of your palate there's a tiny little bit of like a blueberry note there, but I would say it's quite difficult to pick those up. Those are very minimal. I think the main parts of the fruit in this one for me would be a little bit of a passion fruit, mango-y kind of note, some oranges and tangerines, and then a kind of limey quality, and the limey note for me really lingers into the aftertaste, to be honest with you, and it helps, it sort of matches up with the way the kind of floral and grassy qualities in this beer behave. So this is a really kind of interesting beer, to be honest with you. I think the lime and the oranges it has are kind of interesting, but there is a degree of tropical fruit to it as well. So overall, I mean, it's a really quite interesting beer, this one, and I like how it goes together. So it gets a thumbs up from me, this one. It's quite a nice kind of easy drinking IPA, this one. So keep that in mind when you try it. In terms of the mouthfeel, then I'd say, you know, it's a pretty mid-bodied beer. Yeah, bottom end of mid-bodied. Carbonation is pretty smooth in this. It's mainly a wet mouthfeel. There is a degree of oiliness to it and a degree of smoothness, but I'd say it's more of a wet mouthfeel. Malt base is, you know, it's very smooth. It dries out a little bit the further you go into your aftertaste. I'd say quite a smooth malt base, a little bit dry and grainy towards the end of the palate, and some of the yeasty notes coming out as well, those farmhousey yeasty notes. Little bit of hoppy bitterness. I think we're looking around 30 IBUs in this one, and you've got a little bit of a kind of oily, fruity quality to it as well. So I mean, overall, it's an interesting beer, this one. It's kind of typical of some of the other ones I've had from Stockholm Brewing before as well. Like I say, they like the IPAs, the sort of New Englandy IPAs, and some of the sour beers as well, saisons and things like that too. So it's quite typical. This one's quite typical of what I've had from Stockholm Brewing Company before, but a little bit more kind of fruity and hoppy, I would say too. So overall, it's quite an interesting beer, this one. And it's interesting to review it for you here on the channel, and cool to have my first beer involving Gigantic Brewing Company as well. So yeah, let's just leave it at that for this one. If you like a sort of classic-y, old school New England IPA, if you like, if it is even right to say that, because it's still, those are still relatively new on the block. If you like, you know, the heady topper, then the kind of farmhousey appeal that beer has, then this is one I think that you will kind of quite enjoy actually. So yeah, let's just leave it at that then. The Gigantic Transatlantic IPA from Stockholm Brewing Company in Stockholm here in Sweden, and Gigantic Brewing Company, who are from Portland in Oregon in America. Hopefully I can do a dedicated review to them at some point in the future. Maybe I'll see some of their beers over in Japan at Christmas time, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. As always, let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stockholm Brewing and from Gigantic Brewing as well. I'm sure I'll return to both of these breweries at some point in the future, but for now, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Until the next time, slán you just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slán you, skål, cheers.